taking the packing off. I opened the end of the box, so I'm opening the flat side. I can see the brackets. There's the pipes. It's got the black tips on it, the LT1 tips. Neighbor's out mowing his yard. Gonna love it. Tools we need for this job. Tape measure to measure the length of the pipe before I cut. Screwdriver for the chrome tips on my car. Cordless drill, earring protection. 13 millimeter for the exhaust hanger mounts. 14 millimeter for the clamp bolts. Sawzall to make a lot of noise. Okay, so when we're measuring, we got to remember that the exhaust tip ends inside here. This is just a chrome sleeve that goes over it. That's what we can also adjust to get our final measurement and how it's going to look, things like that. So we're going to be measuring from this end under here. You can't see it because of the black, but that's the chrome tip that covers the end of that. It's held on by some Phillips screws. So we're going to measure underneath there so we can find the point to cut. That will be somewhere in here, preferably between that notch and that flange right here, this expansion area, right in there. Because if we end up cutting it back here, yes, it'll clamp close, but if we cut it too short, then that's going to be open. There'll be a hole, so we'll have to adjust it by pushing it in further. So we want to measure it very well. Cut once, measure 50 times. So a point I need to make, you can hear some of the neighbor's machinery and stuff. Point I need to make is we can't really measure from the tip like I was just saying. We're going to measure from the bracket back to here. So right now the factory exhaust mount is right here. So we have a little bit of room to play. But in order to get it to fit right, we want to measure as much of that, put as much of this inside that exhaust mount, which is what I'm going to try and measure. And a shout out to Caleb and Susanna for the camera mount. That's flexible. So we're going to measure from this flange all the way back. And I get around 25 to 26 inches. So I'm going to measure it a couple times and take the average. So I'm going to take where I want it to be. So that's 1.5 inches from this end here, 1.5 inches. We're going to make a mark. So 1.5 inches is going to be our point. $17.5 to this mark here in the corner, and then 8.5, so 25.5. $25.5 gets me between 1/4 and 1/2 inch to the end of that pipe. So now I got to do a similar measurement underneath, but it's a lot trickier because right now I can't just lay this under there and match it side by side. I have to measure around this muffler that's under here now. So just like before, got to find my measuring point. The factory bracket is not flush with the front here. It sticks out kind of at an angle. So I have to keep that in mind with this exhaust mount. I may have to bend the tab on this exhaust mount just a little to get it to fit the same way this does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure from that 1.5 inches from the exhaust, goes right to the hanger, and all the way to the back of this, which is 16.5. So 16.5 inch from hanger to back of exhaust, to back of muffler. And this is the right side. But I have to add more onto that for this area here. Okay, so I'm still gonna, like I said, gonna measure 50 times and cut once. So my 16.5 started here. The flat spot on this side of the muffler is the back side of this flange here, this metal piece. So I'm gonna, that's where my measurement is to this right here. So I'm going to put this flat in there to continue measuring around. So here is 8, 9, 10. I think it's going to be 16 and a half to get to 25 and a half, so that's going to be 9. So so far my educated guess is right here at 9 inches. The best part is if I cut it too short this way, I can cut off a little more. If I cut it too far this way, then I have to find a adapter or something that covers that gap. I'd much rather cut it too short and then have to cut it again. I'm not going, that's basically how I'm measuring. So when I get it measured again, I'll show you again. So I'm lining up the approximate position of the bracket. Here, and aligning it up here, approximation where it goes. And then I kind of put it the direction of the curve, so I'm going to cut it over here. Right now I think I've got it measured pretty close to the end of the pipe, so I'm going to bring my cut in even more, probably near my 8-inch mark that I made on the pipe itself. Because like I said, if I didn't cut off enough, then I can cut off a little more. That's okay. Putting a mark saying this is where I'm cutting, right here. And I'm going to write the word cut. Because like I said, if it's too long this way, I can cut off a little more to make it fit in here. If I cut off too much past that, then I have to put a pipe in there to fill it in. Measure 50 times, cut once. When you're putting your blade under here, near your mark, make sure you don't cut near things that are important, like your spring in the back, different mounts, other bolts, other things. Make sure you're just cutting your exhaust pipe. I'm not going to make you watch how I cut it. You know how. All right, it was a pain to get it out. I made my cut where I said, and the right cam is out. So as you can see, it has chrome exhaust tips on this car. I'm going to take those off and put them on top of this. They're actually pretty centered, and I still have some adjustability as far as tilting it and backwards and forwards, but with those exhaust tips I can bring it out past this rear fascia piece. I like it. And we have mounted, and it's on there tight. Passenger side muffler delete pipe compared to driver side muffler pipe. Now I'm not going to start the car with it like this. That'd be crazy, but I'm not going to. I did it before and after. But here's before with the pipe on, and after with no muffler. I still have the mid pipe and the mid can, and I also have the cats on. Everything's legal on this. This is allowed in my state. And the reason I have it like this, facing backwards, is I don't want any hardware up by my spring. I also can't reach the nuts on this if it's behind the wheel cover. So that's the reason for that. Make sure that the clamp is still on your replacement flange here. So that way you're clamping the pipe onto the old pipe, as opposed to having part of this clamp going onto the old pipe and crushing that. You only want to crush this part here, or squeeze it. I'm using the word crush, but squeeze it, same thing. So I have both hangers in approximation to each other, where they approximately are going to be. So then it's lined up under there. So you can see my tentative cut mark is, it's going to be good, but I need to move it to where closer to the end of that arrow. So it says 8 inches, but I might make it 7.5, just so I can make sure I'm on the flange of the new pipe where that bell starts, instead of near the end where that cut is. So that's what I'm going to do for my part. Where it says 8 inches there, instead of cutting right there, I'm going to move it to the left of, or towards the direction of that arrow about it. I'm going to say 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. Just, I'd much rather have a little bit too much pipe than too short, like I said before. So just like before, a bracket is up here, and if it goes straight down, it comes to the bottom of this. It looks like it anyway. So what I'm going to do is, this is 15 inches long. The can is 15 inches long. So then I went around from the end here and made a line that's 8 inches from the back of the can. So that is my approximate cut line. I suggest you pre-place your new pipe in that approximate area, just to verify that you're not cutting too far this way. If you are, you're going to have a big gap of pipe, and that's not good. If you cut it too short, you can still keep cutting to get it where you need to. So I'm going to pre-mark it here, and then I'm going to fit it just to make sure, eyeball it, so to speak. All right, they're pretty even. Well, they're as even as I'm going to get them. You guys will have to fine-tune your own. Now remember, this is how I put on my car. Yours may vary a little bit. My numbers are meant to get you close, but you have to adjust them for your fit. Still try to keep the same angles and lines, make the clamps look similar. Yes, I still got the plastic on it, but I won't start it until I take it off, obviously. That looks awesome. I'm sure that makes some of you cringe about leaving plastic on. I know it'll melt if I leave it on, but it drives some people in my family bonkers when I leave plastic on appliances. First look, kind of like at a wedding. Ha! They're black tipped. And that one has a chrome tip on it. That's the black tip. See, it's behind the body line. So I'm going to bring the chrome tip to bring it past the plastic. So now I'm going to choose the point on this corner here and measure both of them the same distance, and then drill holes and put the sheet metal screws back in there. Too easy. Alright, so there's what they look like. Angles are just a tiny bit off. I can fine tune, pun intended, some of that later, but they're pretty close. You heard what a cold start sounded like before. This is a cold start after.